Welcome to What Not to Do. I'm Kyle Schmidt, and this is episode 10. I've got Craig Sweeney with me, serial entrepreneur and advertising enthusiast. The person to have the most positive impact on his life was also the person to give him the worst advice ever. Also cut his hair. Stay tuned to find out who.
All right, so I am in Brookfield, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee, and I'm at Cafe Hollander with Craig Sweeney. Craig, how are you doing?
Doing great, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking the quintessential Milwaukee beverage, the Spotted Cow. Actually, not Milwaukee, Nuclearis, right? But local beverage, Spotted Cow, that you can't get outside of Wisconsin. So
only in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I've got the coffee stout, and this is my first time here. And so, is this something that they brew in house?
I believe this is an in-house brew. Can't be certain, but is it good?
It's delicious.
That's all that matters, man.
It's right up my alley. So
good.
That's awesome. Well, Craig, we've been getting to know a little bit each other because we just met via LinkedIn a week ago, right?
Yep.
And so it's been fun shaking hands and hearing a little bit about your story, sharing a little bit of mine, but our listeners may not have any idea of who you are. Now, so folks that you have shared this with, they'll probably have a good idea of who you are, but I'm assuming the majority of listeners will not. So kind of sketch out for us a little bit about just who you are, where you hail from, what you like to do, a little bit of family life. You don't have to give us your social security or anything like that, but, and then help us trace that journey for us, from how you got to where you are today. Like, where'd you start, and just give us that kind of outline. So,
sure.
Craig, who are you?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in a suburb of Milwaukee called Greendale, so a southwest suburb, not too far from here. I'm the oldest of two children. Younger sister Jill, she's 5 years younger than I am. Dad owns a barbershop in Hales Corners, Wisconsin, so he's still working full time at 76 years old. So
you still go back there to get your haircut?
I do from time to time, but Dad's too nice of a guy. He'll stay after work, and wait for me till the wee hours, and then won't charge me. So I'm like, you know what, Dad, go home, put your feet up. You're old enough to enjoy dinner, not have to wait for your son to give him a free haircut, right?
No family discounts.
Right. I definitely get the family discount, but I don't take advantage of it. But so it still gives a good haircut at 76.
I think every guy has to have a good barber, honestly.
Yeah.
And you see a little bit of a resurgence on the barbershop deal, and
you do.
That's good. Yeah,
and it's pretty cool because it's part of the social fabric too of many communities.
Oh yeah.
So I think Dad, at this point, Mom passed a couple years ago, and I think that the social interaction that Dad gets at the barbershop really help him just from a socialization perspective. He needs that. We hang out a lot. He's a great guy, but I think if he didn't have his work to fall back on, he might go a little stir crazy.
Yeah, it really is a social hub of a community.
Yeah.
And how big is the town in which he lives?
So Hales Corners is just a small suburb, actually right next to Greendale where we grew up. So I'd say probably 30,000 or so, small little suburb. Yeah.
So probably not small enough to where everybody knows everyone, but probably not too far off.
Not too far off. In fact, interesting story, my grandparents started a supper club and tavern in Hales Corners called Sweeney's Silver Dollar back in the 40s. And so a lot of people do know the name in that area. And it was part of me that wishes the supper club would have been kept in the family. But none of the uncles or my father wanted to do it at the time, and they sold out. So that would have been fun. Yeah.
Supper clubs are kind of a unique thing in Wisconsin. They're not necessarily a national thing.
Right.
Maybe so our listeners who don't live in Wisconsin, what's a supper club?
So supper club is unique, as you said, Kyle. So it's got an ambiance that's usually a little bit of a darker type of environment. You think of a lot of wood or mahogany and booths instead of tables, and kind of this environment that reminds you back, the 60s, 70s, a little bit more of a old school vibe. They bring you a relish tray, which I can probably do without, but usually they'll specialize in something like prime rib or some sort of cut of red meat. So red meat is probably very centric to the supper club experience, as is a good old fashioned, and that's a Wisconsin chicken. And fried chicken, absolutely. So those good meat staples, and can't forget the old fashioned though. That's a vital part of a supper club, a good old fashioned.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. What's the name of your dad's barbershop?
Sweeney's Barbershop.
Sweeney, okay.
So inventive name.
Any jokes about Sweeney Todd?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
so over the years, it's that's been a running joke for sure.
Does he do the straight edge?
So he used to. I think there's something now. He doesn't do it. I'm not sure if it's a regulation thing where they can't do it any longer. I'm not positive, but I know he doesn't do it any longer. Maybe it's because he's 76 and he doesn't trust himself.
That could be it too. Well, that's awesome. And you shared before, you are getting married in August.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
you got a fiance.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm getting married to Marianne. We've been together a couple of years now, and we both were married before and have two kids. Each of us have two kids of our own and two dogs. So we came together and now have four dogs in our house.
What kind of dogs?
So we've got two 15-year-old boys, a golden doodle and a shih tzu, that are getting long in the tooth, so to speak. So we'll see how much longer they're around. They're sweet guys, but they're getting pretty old. And then two girls that she brought to the relationship: a flat coat retriever and a German Shepherd yellow lab mix.
Yeah.
Good girls, and they all get along really well. But it's a handful. Four dogs, man. I wouldn't recommend that at all.
Well, now for your human children, you've got a son and a daughter.
So I've got a son that's 28.
He's out in New York City.
He's out in New York City acting, and then my daughter Kennedy is 22. She's in Denver now. She moved out there about a year and a half ago, and loves it out there. Yeah, Denver's fabulous.
If I could close my eyes and wake up anywhere, it'd be the mountains.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see myself there at some point for sure.
And now your fiance, does she have kids as well?
So she does. She's got two, and they're at our house. So we all live together, and so she's got Alex and Nate, and Al's going to be at Mankato, Minnesota next year for school.
Now, boy or girl?
He's a boy.
So two boys?
Two boys.
Awesome.
And then Nate is a sophomore in high school, and he's doing real well. So
that's awesome. That's a full house.
Yeah, absolutely.
When everyone's home, you got three boys and a girl, and then for dogs, you got two females, two males. It's just awesome.
No,
what a full house.
It's a full house, and we're the kids are all obviously the two older ones are out of the house, and then really the two that are in high school still, they're mobile. They both have their licenses, so. Life has changed, right, as you get older. Do you have kids, Kyle?
I do, yeah.
And how old are yours?
So 3, 2, 1, and we've got our fourth coming in March.
Wow.
So we'll have 4 and 4 come March. So we're what you call a highly efficient family.
Brother, God bless you, man. You are right in the heart of it.
And then boy, and we have a girl coming in March. So
okay, fantastic. Congratulations.
It's awesome, yeah.
That's very cool, man. Excellent. So you know how it is, and totally. Now that the kids are mobile and out on their own more, life does change. So, I know it's good, but there's going to be nights when you're like, hey, is there light at the end of the tunnel? And there is.
Oh, yeah. Right. Well, and like parenting is kind of at the heart of this podcast, right? Like you want your kids to go further faster than you could. And so you kind of look at yourself as like a stepping stone for them to walk over, or a foundation that they can build upon. Yeah. And that's really kind of what we're getting at in this podcast is drawing from the experiences, not only the successes, but the failures, so that those who are aspiring on similar paths as we are, they can go further faster than we can, right? They can build on top of our foundation, and we don't have to keep on reinventing the wheel, because that's no way to construct or build society at all, right?
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. I think, looking at our failures from a parenting perspective, and wishing for not necessarily more for our kids, but better. So, and if I would use the word more, I would want that to mean more happiness and more contentment, right? Because I think, choices. And I think, from that perspective, I think, I look at my kids, they're already, probably surpassed me in being content and happy with kind of their choices that they've made to this point in their lives.
Yeah.
And I love that about them, right? That they, and not necessarily from a career standpoint, but from more of a values and what they believe in standpoint, right? And so that's, I think, more important than anything is to have that, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool.
Hey, this is Kyle. Well done on your decision today to be great. Those are my kiddos in the background. Hey, if you want more of this kind of content, find me on social media. We'll keep the conversation going. You can hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, at StartWithWNTD. Again, at StartWithWNTD. We'll see you there.
Okay, so you're an advertising guy. You're a sales guy.
Yeah.
You've been part of the team. You've led teams. You've started businesses. You've sold businesses. Talk to us. What are you doing today, and how did you get there?
So I'm doing a lot today, quite frankly. So Snap Finance, which is what I'm doing from a 9 to 5 perspective. We are, and it's like everything in life, Kyle, everything's sales, right? And so that's it's all about those relationships, as you know. You're involved in that in that industry as well. We do consumer finance. So if you're going to a furniture store, a auto service station, a tire or rim store, we provide all the back-end financing. So the consumer can finance that purchase over a certain number of months, and look at maybe bringing home a little bit more than they would have otherwise if they just had to pay cash for that item. So we provide that retailer with the ability to finance their products.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're in sales there, or what's your role there?
I manage Wisconsin.
Okay, cool.
For us. Yeah. So it was a scenario where after I sold Shift Savings about almost 2 years ago now, I did some consulting after that, and then really was looking at what do I want to do with the rest of my life, right? As I think
you want to be when you grow up.
Right, and I think we all do that from time to time, and based upon where we are in life, kind of how content we are. I was at the point where I've done a lot of building and starting things, and I wanted to be able to leverage my network and my relationships to, quite frankly, go out and kill it for a company, but not have the administrative and the HR and the team building issues that I had previously.
Yeah.
And that, quite frankly, takes a little bit of weight off your shoulders and allows you to just perform on a daily basis, and it's kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
So there's less pressure, right?
Yeah, business ownership isn't for everyone, and frankly, it's not for some people.
Yeah.
Right? Some people operate better in that environment where they can just go crush it and not have to handle all the responsibilities of the logistics and keeping the infrastructure of the organization going.
Absolutely. That being said, I've got other things going on.
Right. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I've started a company called Twizzl. So Twizzl is an app that will be released late spring here that focuses on identifying and engaging with an audience for experiences such as Pitchfork Festival down in Chicago, Lollapalooza, Summerfest, Wisconsin State Fair, and also bands and brands and production companies that want to get audiences built or increased for their artists, for instance, right? So at its heart, what it is, it's a contesting platform as a social destination. So instead of a media organization building contests out on their own properties, we have a social destination that provides the opportunities for our users to search for free contests to enter, which could be a VIP experience to Summerfest or Lollapalooza or Coachella, and enter that contest for free, and also accelerate their number of entries in that contest by spreading the word of their social network. So we got some pretty good interest from some of the from the music festival world right now.
That's awesome.
So we're excited about that.
Yeah. So it's not the bands that do it; it's the fans, right?
So the fans are the ones that enter the contests. We call them campaigns, but it's basically a social contesting platform, and it's based upon what we call a tipping point mechanism or thought process, by which Coachella might say to Twizzl, might say to me, we'll give you 40 VIP experiences to give away on the Twizzl platform. but you have to reach the tipping point of, say, 80,000 contest entries. And once that's reached, that tipping point is reached, we'll then give out those prizes to your user base on an ad hoc basis based on number of entries.
That's so cool.
So thanks.
It's exciting. And coming, you said, in April?
Yeah, so we're going to be releasing it probably late April.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we need a little lead-in time prior to Summerfest and State Fair. So
yeah, super exciting. And now, you mentioned in one of your interests, I don't know if you'd call it a passion or just something that you enjoy doing, is advertising. And it's kind of been a scarlet thread throughout your career. You mentioned David Ogilvy, right?
Yeah.
Are you a Dan Kennedy guy?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you might know a little bit about the advertising industry as well.
Just a little bit. I would say I'm a novice, but kind of going back to your comment on everything is sales. I mean, everything in a sense is sales and marketing. Yeah. And that's not a dirty thing. It's just how the world works, right? It's relationships. It's the connection. It's we all have a product or service that's intended for somebody else. Who is that person? How do we get it to them, right?
Well, absolutely. And as you know, I mean, even reaching out to me to see if I'd be interested in coming onto the podcast, it was a sales-driven.
It's a sales pitch,
right? So really, everything that we do, from our server here at Cafe Hollander to you and I, is driven via sales, and so. When I look at that, like you said, there was a while during my career that I felt that sales was a dirty word, or people look down on salespeople, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is
some truth to that.
There is some truth to that, and that's unfortunate because if you look at salespeople in general in the profession, it's one of the only professions that, quite literally, you get out of it what you put into it, right? And I think that from a societal perspective, that ties in with our relationship with money, right? And so often you hear money is the root of all evil. Money can't buy you happiness. All these different sayings, and that drives a negative perception in our own minds of what money is, right? Money, and tell me if you agree or not, is in and of itself isn't worth anything, but it's a tool, right? Oh, yeah. So it's a tool by which we can buy freedom, by which we can, do the things we want to do, by which we can support our families. So money in and of itself cannot buy happiness, but money does make it easier to be happy because you have that as a tool to provide for yourself or your family, and do the things you want to do in life instead of the things you have to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think money is like technology. It's a terrible master, but it's a terrific servant, right?
Absolutely.
And so the more of it you have, the better. And I think that, for our listeners that heard the introductory podcast, we riffed quite a bit on the moral obligation of success, that we all have not just a duty, but it's a two-sided coin, a duty and a delight to be successful. With that, whatever skills and gifts, whatever products and services that we're bringing to the world, if we're not unleashing the absolute best that we can do and giving our all in those things, we're robbing the world, we're robbing our families, and we're robbing ourselves. And so, somewhere along the way, we thought that wealth and money was a bad thing and shame on you, but I don't know about you, but I've never heard anyone that has been super successful, super wealthy, that has ever said money's a bad thing.
Right.
Or people like to take, they'll take some, what's the verse from the Bible? The love of money is the root of all evil, but they'll say the money itself is the root of all evil. And they forget that Solomon says money answers everything. Right. So it's like sometimes things are just getting like skewed and twisted and this, that, or the other thing, or they'll say like, well, just be content or be satisfied, all that kind of stuff. And the desire to build wealth has nothing to do with how content you are. Now, of course, we can turn anything into a self-destructive, deal. You can do that with alcohol. You can do that with whatever.
Right. Sure.
But it doesn't make alcohol bad.
Right.
And I think that every person should try to make as much money as they can so they can do more good in the world. Right. And like you said, it's a tool. It's a servant, and that should drive us when we have something really valuable that we can take to the world that they want to pay for. That means we can just take that profit and reinvest it back into providing more value to the world, right?
Absolutely. And, like what you're doing here is providing value. What you're doing here is giving back. And when we talk about, with success comes responsibility or duty, when I look at those two words that you use for that, responsibility and duty, I would tend to say that it's more of a blessing to be able to give back, to be able to impart knowledge, to be able to, from a monetary perspective, to give back, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So rather than a duty, which I think has maybe more of a negative connotation.
Sure.
I like, it's a blessing. It's to be able to do that is pretty cool, right? So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I agree. Sometimes we think of duty and we kind of cringe. We think like begrudging obedience or like we have to this. I don't mean that. I just mean like we owe it to ourselves, to our fellow men, to take the skills and the gifts that we have and to use them to the best of our ability in service for others.
Well, you're absolutely right. And we talk about the gifts that we've been given to be able to utilize those and optimize those to their fullest for the good of ourselves and our communities. And so when you look at that, I think we talked a little bit about parenting, and I think the ability to recognize what gifts you were given and to embrace those gifts is probably the most freeing thing that an individual can experience in their lifetime, right? To kind of, really at some point during their lifespan, really embrace who they actually are and what gifts they've been given, right?
Yeah, and if you flip the script, you'd imagine life would be pretty miserable if you were only ever doing things that you were never good at and you didn't enjoy.
Right.
I think generally the better that we are at something, the more we tend to enjoy that thing. And so, or we could have enjoyments and we could get good at the things that we enjoy doing. So there's some options there, but it's no way to live life just to whatever your work is and doing things that you absolutely hate, that you're not good at. Go find something else to do. Like, what do you enjoy doing? What are you good at doing? And what are your economic opportunities to be able to make to build wealth doing those things?
Right. Yeah.
And the more that those three things can overlap, I think is at least a good starting point. Otherwise, I mean, and I kind of before we press play on the podcast, so we were kind of talking a little bit about sometimes people are not just being satisfied in their line of work because maybe they don't really know what they want. They're not clear on what they want in life, and they just kind of fall into something. And it's fine, but they don't really enjoy it. Maybe it's not playing on their strengths.
Yep.
And they find themselves, why am I not happy? Why am I not satisfied?
And to be honest with you, Kyle, I think there's two ways to look at that. If somebody's either struggling or not happy with their chosen career, chosen job at a certain point, I think there's two things that you can look at. Are they giving that particular role their 100% commitment, right?
Are they all in?
Are they all into that role? Because if they're not, give that a shot before you move on. Give that a shot, right? Give it your all for 6 months, 9 months, whatever that number is. See what happens at that point, right? If you're still not happy, maybe it is not the right fit, right? Yeah. But I think that's important. I think people too often, give in and say this isn't the right fit, but they've half-assed it for their the whole time at that particular place.
They've made it miserable themselves.
Right.
Couldn't agree more. You're exactly right. Ask yourself, are you all in? Are you all in committed? If you are, is there something more that you can do? Yeah. Right. And if not, then maybe it's time to look for a different vehicle.
Right.
That's super good.
But people have asked me before, hey, I'm not, where can I go? What can I do to make more money? And I'll say, well, are you the top salesperson in your company? Well, no, I'm 5. All right. Well, you got some work to do then.
You got some work to do. Yeah.
So there you go.
That's awesome.
Hey, so you're still listening, which means you like it? I think so. If you do, share this with somebody else who you think would not only like it, but be helped by it, and join us in our mission to make the world be great.
All right, so let's get into, I think, what probably my favorite section is, and it's hard to say a favorite, but I really love this particular section. So as you're looking back, this show is about failures. We're leaning into failures. People are opening up about their failures. It's called What Not to Do for a reason, right? That said, you've had a lot of successes, right? And the people that have been sharing the failures have had a lot of successes. So walk us through, as you kind of look back over your life, share with us a few of the things that you actually did really right.
Okay, so I'll share one that is kind of over and above anything else, and then I'll get into my more work-related successes. And certainly, from a success perspective, nothing can beat the family that you raise, and so that is, but far and above my greatest success, right? Absolutely, hands down. That's my pride. That's my joy. Certainly that I can be prideful about business successes, but it can't top that, right? So let's put that out there. Other than that, I was, one of the successes was really founding, running, and exiting at Shift Savings. We can get into my missteps and the mistakes along that way, but that was a proud moment when we actually, had a successful exit. There's many startups that don't, have that happen. And so, and again, I think you have to have those failures to be able to get to that success. But that was something I'm very proud of. I was very proud of the team that we assembled there. I was very proud of teams I've built over the years. I think one of the things that I look at is being able to surround yourself with people that you can basically hand the reins over to and let them do their job, because you've got the confidence that they can do it and do it justice. So I think there's leaders out there that have a little bit of fear of hiring people that are smarter or more driven than they are, and I think that's the biggest mistake a leader can make is trying to maintain that control, and that control is based upon fear that person that they're going to hire is going to take their spot. But
that's the point, isn't it?
That's the point, right? Not only do you want that succession plan, but you want those folks that are on your team to elevate the entire team, right, and including yourself. So if you don't think that that's going to reflect highly upon you, the assembly of a good team, you're mistaken. So that was one thing that I've been proud of over the years, is to the fact that I've built some good teams and had myself surrounded by good people.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one of the ways that I've heard it was a really good CEO, his first day in office, in that role, will know exactly who he's going to have succeeding.
Yeah.
Like, he's already thinking that way. He's already thinking who that's going to be. But to your point, I think so many people are more self-absorbed. They care only about themselves. It's a threat to their power, to their fame, their fortune, whatever it might be, their Instagram face. And they don't necessarily have the best interest of the company in mind, because if they did, then they wouldn't really care about that succession plan, right?
Right.
That's unfortunate. And then how sometimes, like you said, you bring on other folks that are smarter, more capable. They're probably going to push the company forward and do bigger, better things, which is actually really good.
Yeah.
Go further, faster, which is in a sense what you as a parent, what you want your kids. You don't want your kids to never, you want your kids to do greater things, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a similar dynamic there. But again, unfortunately, if it's just about them, the CEO, whoever's on top of that power structure, they're probably going to hire folks that aren't as smart as them, aren't as bright, because that way then they kind of maintain that power structure. Everyone has to look up to them. And I don't know that that's the greatest way to run a company. Now, all I'd say, I've never ran a company before, so that's just conjecture on my part. But what are your thoughts on that?
You're exactly right. I think you need to look at, from a succession standpoint, but I think you need to look at your again, that word duty, your obligation to, if you're a public company, your obligation to your shareholders. If you're not a public company, you've got an obligation to your customers. You've got an obligation to your other team members to, bring the best possible team together to tackle whatever you're trying to tackle, right? So I think that's huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay, so good stuff. As you're looking back over your career, you didn't do everything right?
No, I did a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, we can do multiple episodes if you want to, but no, I'm teasing. But as you look back, what's one or two of your biggest failures, like as you look back, like these just naturally rise to the top, and it's kind of like one of those things, like, man, if I could just have that back again.
Yeah.
Like it's like in a sense you're over it, but you have the scars to not let you forget, right?
Yeah.
Like what are a few of those failures?
Yeah, I think again I'm going to kind of talk a little bit from a broader perspective at first here, and really one of my failures would be not really trying to find out who I was and what my gifts were and embracing those gifts earlier on in life. I finally, in my 40s, I realized, kind of what I wanted to do, what made me happy, and I still didn't go all in on that until just, in the last probably 5 years. And I think, if I look back, that's a mistake that I made, going down a path because it did pay the bills, and it, now I'm talking about my sales career in the software space initially. Going down that path, not saying I wasn't happy doing it, but it wasn't something that really got my creative juices flowing, if you will, that really made me happy. And I think if I would have embraced and really recognized in me that I needed to be building something, that I needed to be creating, that I could have started that process and gone all in earlier on, right? So that, if I look at it from a broader perspective, that's my bigger overarching failure, right?
So how would you say that, in a way of saying what not to do? Would you say, like, don't be a stranger to yourself, or like how would you say it in like in a way like that?
Absolutely.
Don't do this or don't be that.
It's like be a badass. Don't worry about what other people are thinking. Okay, so many of us worry about what our families or what our peer groups are thinking. If you look at limiting mindsets, either your own or if you look at the opinions, if you will, of your peer group or family, if you go tell somebody today that you're going to make $2 million next year while you're making $80,000 this year, you're going to hear a lot of negative feedback. You're tending to speak to people who don't have mindsets of success, who don't. They've given up on themselves. They haven't taken that step that you want to take. So you can politely say thank you for your opinion, and then go and surround yourself with people who are going to try to help you get there, right?
That's exactly right.
And so, so that if I can offer advice, don't listen to other people's limiting thoughts on what you can do with your life.
Yeah, for sure. So then, and going back to what you said about really taking the time to, like, one of your failures was not taking the time to really clarify who you were and what you wanted at a younger age. How would you talk about that as what not to do? Don't do this. How would you phrase that?
Yeah, don't pigeonhole yourself into an opportunity or a career that you're making the leap into based upon a preconceived ideology, based upon what your family might think is the right thing to do. I think that's where so many of us fall into traps and end up 30 years down the road wondering, where am I in my life, right? I think listen to your heart. Listen to the gifts that God or whoever you believe in has given you, right? Listen to those and be true to those. I think on the flip side, I think you mentioned this earlier, Kyle, is people who say follow your passion, right? I think that's bullshit, to be completely honest with you. Certainly, I've got a passion for downhill skiing, but I realized early on I'm not going to be able to make a living really doing that, right? Especially in Wisconsin, right? So I just think that's too many people say that, and it's one of those trite comments, and it's like, it's not realistic, right?
It sounds good, but you can't lead with it. I think passion, and I would also want to press the defined terms, right? Because some people say passion, it might mean desire, and I think desire is important. I think desire determines behavior, but passion might just be something that kind of comes and goes. Like in one season of life you really like this, another season of life you really like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and if you're trying to have the foundation of what you do be passion, that's a pretty shaky foundation, right? Like, think market, like Dan Kennedy, he talks about market demand, if that's there, then align that with your purpose, and then something you can be passionate about.
Absolutely.
And then the money comes, right?
No,
so it's
100%.
so passion's a part of the equation. It just depends on where you put it, because otherwise it's just a hobby. Like if you might be passionate about it, but you may be passionate about drinking beer, but if no one's going to pay you to drink beer, then you're going to go broke.
Well, you're exactly right, and this is obviously more of a conversation that we're having about business pursuits, but we can also parallel that to our personal life and our marriages. Passion versus a desire to have a meaningful relationship with that person, right? So passion can come and go even in a relationship, right? But you work hard because you have a desire and a love for that particular person.
Mackenzie, can we do a round two? Do you want the same thing?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Same thing. Thanks. Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's one thing I love about this podcast too, is a lot of these principles transcend just like a career perspective. It's really life stuff.
Yeah.
It's really life stuff. So what else? Anything else that comes to mind as you're kind of looking back?
If I look back at, my startup, if I look at Shift Savings, certainly, making the leap into the startup space, I didn't do it on a whim, but certainly I discounted how difficult it is, Go into it realizing it's hard work. Not everybody's a unicorn. Not everybody's going to get, bought for $10 million, $100 million.
I'm a unicorn, Craig.
Right. you are a unicorn. Go into it with the realistic attitude that you're going to have to work your ass off, that it's not going to come easy, then most likely it's going to fail. I should have realized earlier on that I needed to raise more money. We were initially a B2C application. We didn't have the funds to be able to support that and grow our market. Growing a consumer product, a consumer application is very difficult and very resource intensive. So we made the flip. We switched to a B2B organization built around an employee benefit platform. And ultimately, that was the right way to go, but we wasted a lot of time doing that. And I think in some respects, the mistakes that I made in doing that confused my market and also confused my possible investors as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've learned that in life, things generally take twice as long and cost twice as much.
Yeah.
And so if you try to budget conservatively, give yourself enough margin, it's like, I think, we ran the numbers, I think it's going to be this. Okay, let's double that.
Yep.
Right? That can be a good rule of thumb. The worst case scenario, it's just a way to measure or mitigate risk, I guess.
Yeah.
So I would maybe a good way to say it is don't discount the work.
No, absolutely.
Right? You got to go in with your eyes wide open. You got to, picture the worst case scenario and then 10x that, and then and then maybe you're going to go in with some sobriety.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And by the way, you just stole my second book, the 10x rule.
Yeah.
By Grant Cardone.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I heard some Uncle G coming through you. I was like,
a
all
little bit of Uncle G there. Yeah.
I would love to get him on the podcast. Uncle G, I've already called you out more than once, but I know you're listening to this.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Craig and I want you on the podcast. I would love to be able to sit down with you and interview you. So
we'll get this in front of him. Yeah, Uncle G, baby. I think the conference is coming up this week or next week. So
are you going?
I wish I was. I'm not.
Oh, me too. I probably need to be there. Probably a lot of great folks to be able to sit down with them.
Can you imagine?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's a goal for next year, right?
Yeah, there you go. So good. Okay, anything else that you're looking back on your life? Mackenzie, thank you so much.
From a mistake perspective, I think I should have more times than I did go all in on what I was doing, Kyle.
Yeah.
Rather than half-ass, and I think that's part of what I'm doing with Welcome to Walmart, with the blog and the podcast series is, hey, when you're tired, when you're fed up with yourself, with your own excuses, with your own half-assing of life, that's when you start making changes. When you look in the mirror and say, you know what I did for 20 years there, I might have been able to pay the bills, I might be okay, but that was bullshit. I wasn't all in, right? And I think I wish I would have done that earlier. I wish I would have been all in earlier on my life in general, right? So everything, I think I'm a good parent. I love my kids to death. But can I say I was the best parent I could have been? Absolutely not. Was I, in relationships, was I the best I could have been? I think I've learned a lot. I think now I'm much better than I was before, but we're not perfect, right? But I think if we're all in, then we can be the best version of ourselves at that particular point in time.
Yeah, exactly. And we're always going to be learning. I mean, we're humans, so we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have failures. That's inescapable. But to your point, if we make it a point to be aware of those things, to be conscious of those things, to keep those things before us, and it goes back to what you're saying about, from thinking about Rich, about just actually what we believe, we become what we believe, right? Yeah. Whatever we're focusing on, we're going to eventually become that. We need to be aware and conscious of those things. Even the idea of, who we spend time with, right? We could, sit around playing video games all day if that's who we're spending time with, right? And that's just who we end up becoming, rather than what about the people that are trying to crush it in their sales job? Maybe I need to spend time with them, right? And just get outside and realize what it really means to be all in on things.
Well, you're exactly right, and I think whatever the saying is, I'm struggling for the word here, but you're the culmination of your three closest friends, or the people you spend most time with, or whatever it is. And I think that is extremely true. I mean, surround yourselves with people who are not only successful themselves, but who want to help you succeed. If your tribe doesn't celebrate your successes, get a new tribe.
Yeah, right.
Right? I mean, so...
If your tribe doesn't celebrate your successes, guess what? That ain't your tribe.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's huge, absolutely huge.
All right, I'm curious. You tell me, which entrepreneur, which leader, which public figure do you want to hear from? Who do you want to sit down with me, not only share their successes, but lean into their failures? Why? To help equip you for success. Send me a note, tag them in this, have them reach out to me, and the sky's the limit. Let's go. Let's get who you want on What Not to Do.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, people sometimes just make it miserable, and then that's when you know that discontentment is the issue. They're not all in. They haven't really tried. They're not looking to take on more responsibility. It could be that maybe there's something else that they would enjoy doing more. But I agree. I'm not a huge fan of some of the kind of common sayings of just go do something that you're passionate about. I think desire and passion is important. I don't think it's what you lead with, right? Because I think you can come to learn to enjoy things more, and you probably will grow more passionate about things. LeBron James probably enjoyed basketball, passionate about basketball, but he's probably a lot more passionate about basketball today than he was when he first started, right?
Absolutely.
And I think the more that we grow in mastery of things, the more that we're all in committed and cultivating that excellence and that mastery, we will tend to grow in our enjoyment of the thing. That said, if we're constantly in life trying to butt up against only doing things that we're not very good at, it might be good just to go, trying to understand ourselves. What are we good at? Let's go press into those things, right?
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think, I think there's many of us due to either familial or societal obligations, or use that word duty again, or expectations of our parents or our community or our peer group, is doing something that they're not happy with, and they may be all in, they may be doing really well, but they still might not be happy. There comes a point in time during your life when I think you have to make the decision. First of all, do I know who I am? Do I know what I want? And if I do, if that's in contrast to what I'm currently doing, how do I make that change, right? And so I personally am starting a blog and possibly a podcast that's coming about just that. It's really, looking at folks that are of a certain age, so, 40, 45, 50, that have transformed themselves, that have made big changes, that have become successful or happy, right? So that's going to be the subject matter that we tackle. And the folks that we talk to are people who, hey, they've made that mid-career or mid or later life change because they've really realized who they are, and they're tired of half-assing it, right? They want to really, they've looked at themselves, as I have in many instances in the last 10 years, looked at myself and said, you know what? Enough with the gosh darn excuses. Enough with half-assing stuff. Enough with not being happy. What would happen if I just go for it?
Yeah.
What would happen if I go all in on something?
Yeah.
And I think what happens,
once in my life.
absolutely. And I think what happens then, Kyle, is not only are you successful in that particular role, but that opens doors and also opens up for opportunities via relationships that we forge, right?
Sure.
So that can kind of snowball, and you can find yourself in a drastically different position than you were just a year ago.
Exactly, or 3 months.
Right.
I mean, it is amazing, and it's sometimes we just kind of sleepwalk through life. And it goes back to that idea of like, did we choose this path, or was it chosen for us? Because generally, if we aren't proactive in choosing the path that we want, it's going to be chosen for us. Like, there isn't really this middle ground, right?
Right.
And you can wake up one day and realize you spent your 30-year career. You ignored, all of your interests and things that you enjoyed because you were told that you could never be anything, that you could never make money doing those things.
No, absolutely.
Rather than saying, well, okay, I've got my job here, but why don't I try a side hustle? Why don't I go all in and commit 20 hours a week to building this business? Why don't I see if I can't get it going, right? Who's around me, or who do I need to get around me to help me understand maybe a little bit different narrative or what my real options are, rather than just A, B, or C. Is this the only storyline or narrative that I can believe, or is there actually something else out there? Is there someone else who's done this? They've woken up 25, 30 years into the career and they're like, you know what? There's so much more.
Who am I? And so, just think about the sheer number of people that, we probably know a lot of these people that, back when they were 17 years old, they said, you know what? My uncle, is an engineer at Allen Bradley, and he's had a pretty good life. I've got some good math skills. I'm going to be an engineering major, right? And that decision when they were 17 years old basically dictated the next 40 years of their lives, right? Whether they were happy or not, right? But how many folks wake up 20 years later and say, something's missing, right?
And they didn't actually answer the question.
Right.
Because when they look at their uncle who says, well, he's doing pretty well, what does he do? Okay, I guess that's only part of it.
Right.
What does that person want? What's the end for that person, right? And are we starting with the end in mind, saying, okay, this is where I want to go. Let me find someone who's there. Let me learn from them. And this is kind of like the old apprenticeship model, right?
Yeah.
You're apprenticing underneath a master because you want to eventually be able to do what they do someday. So you want to be able to learn from them, and then you're going to eventually spin off and do your own thing, right?
Right. You do it your way, hopefully.
But if we take it, and I think this is why so much guidance can be needed, because as a 17-year-old, I don't know about you, but I had my head in my ass,
So I was an idiot.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like there's so many, or even going back to the ideas of lenses and mental models. We haven't collected that many at that point in our lives.
No.
And so to have someone come along and help to draw out and kind of really think through these things can be really, really helpful. I hope that's one of the ripple effects of this podcast for any younger listeners that we have, that they're really helped by folks that have built businesses, or they're leaders, or they're public figures or something, and they say, I want to be like that. I'm gonna reach out to Craig because here's his email and here's my chance.
Right.
Or Craig mentioned these 3 books. If I want to do this, that thing. So look, I don't have 2 nickels shoved together, but I'm going to get these 3 books, right? Or do what I need to do.
No, absolutely. And I think what you're doing here is great, and I think it can help people. And even if it's looking at things through a different lens, right? I mean, I think that's really important to look at your decisions, especially early on in life, as decisions that will have those ripple effects like you talked about, right? And those will extend years into the future. So, you might want to try a few things when you're younger. You might want to, figure out who you are a little bit. I think so many people dive into things that, 10 years later are like, what, I wish I would have done something different, right? And thankfully it is 10 years, maybe it's 40 years, right?
And the other thing that's so interesting too is how much technology has decentralized things to where, there are teenagers making millions of dollars online.
Yeah.
Teenagers.
Yeah.
Right? They're not making it up, but they're finding ways, entrepreneurial ways to be able to make income, to build wealth. So it's amazing. And so I think when we realize, that we've got the world in our pocket, so we're sitting here, at a pub, and I'm recording this on my iPhone.
Yeah,
right. I've got a microphone with me.
Isn't that
that's
awesome?
About it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just crazy, right? And then I'm gonna go home and turn this into MP3 format, and then the world's gonna get it.
Right.
No, I mean,
you're absolutely right. I mean, this is fabulous. The ability, if you look at the proliferation of different networking organizations, so you had the big three before, from a network perspective. Now, the disintermediation of content is mind-boggling.
It's crazy. So it's like you never know how close you are to success, to that right path. There's kind of a classic book, Think and Grow Rich. Have you ever read it?
Well, as a spoiler, that was one of the three that I was going to mention. Yeah.
And the story about the guy stopping 3 feet short of gold.
Yeah.
Right. So in short, for our listeners, if you haven't read it, it's a great book. I used to think it was kind of like this, kind of blah blah blah, emotional stuff. It's actually really practical, really earthy. It's great stuff. I'd highly recommend it. It tells a story in there about a guy that went out west of the gold rush, found gold, came back, was able to, I think, borrow the funds maybe from his nephew, come back, and they started digging. Awesome. They found enough to be able to pay off the equipment, and then stopped, ran out. Like, where's the vein, right? Where's the gold vein? And they just gave up and said, well, here's a scrapper. Let's just sell the equipment to him. They made $100, and the scrapper, being wise beyond his years, hires a mining engineer. Right, and the mining engineer comes and kind of laughs. He's like, well, what they didn't realize, they don't know anything about fault lines, right? And he's like, you'll find your gold 3 feet over here, right? And because of the fault lines, the gold line, the gold vein shifted, and the scrapper became a millionaire, right? And then eventually, I think the nephew that had initially lent a lot of the capital, he eventually got it back, but he went on to be one of the most successful life insurance salesmen ever, right? Which is awesome. And so the whole point is, so they experienced failure, but they stopped. Right. They didn't use failure as a friend; they used it as a foe. They used it as a dead end, not something to launch from. And with the idea of technology, or if you're at a place where you're not exactly sure, you're not really clear on where you're going in life, like, don't stop, don't give up on yourself, because you don't realize probably how close you are to finding that success.
I agree. And I think you and I both know. When I look at that book, there's a couple things that I take away from that is certainly, main theme is what you spend your time thinking about, where your thoughts are. That's what you manifest in life, right?
Desire determines behavior.
Exactly. So that's the number one takeaway for me is be careful what you think about, because that's what's going to happen in your life, right? So, but certainly, stopping 3 feet from that vein of gold, one of the things that I like to do is, at the end of my day, when I think I'm done, I make one more call, right? And you could say it's coincidence. I tend to think it's not. That I've gotten many appointments and sales out of that one last call that I did at the end of the day, right? So I think that's another
it's
thing
a good
to look at.
application. When you think the road has stopped, take one more step.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Good. So tell us a little bit about, we had a lot of fun riffing on that, just really good stuff. Tell us a little about why you do what you do. Speaking of desire, speaking of things that you enjoy, why are you doing what you're doing today? What keeps you waking up in the morning and still doing the work that you're doing?
So I think it's because I have kind of realized who I am and what my purpose and my gifts are, right? I think, in terms of my, I guess you call it a day job. I think, from a certain perspective, I'm definitely optimizing my gifts there. It's a very highly sales-driven role, and I was told early on that sales is something I should look at based upon my personality and how I can forge and nurture relationships with other people. That's great. I love it. From perspective of a company and a role, I couldn't ask for more. But I have realized about myself that I need to be able to create, right? And to not create whether that's the new app that's coming out, Twizzl, or whether that's a blog. The blog title is called Welcome to Walmart, by the way. So check us out. Welcome to Walmart. Basically, it's the name is derived from the perspective of if you don't want to end up being a greeter at Walmart when you're 65, get your ass in gear, figure out who you are, and do something about it, right?
That's awesome.
So welcome to Walmart.com. Take a look at that. Sorry, shameless plug there. I apologize. But so, that's why I do it, in a bigger, more, I guess, familiar light. I do it for my kids and for Marianne. I mean, it's, to be able to provide for your family, obviously, for most of us, that's a driver, right? So absolutely, that's a huge driver for me as well.
Cool. That's awesome. And we love shameless plugs here on what not to do. So we'll have not only your contact information, but your blog information, all that kind of stuff in the show notes, so people can continue to follow up with you.
Great.
And follow you. So.
Excellent.
Yep. Awesome. Good.
All right, so you tell me, do we need more conversations like this? Do we need more folks helping us to consider failure as a friend or a foe and helping us to avoid the same pitfalls and failures that they made so that we can go further, faster in our own journey toward success? If this is worth it to you and you want to put your money where your mouth is, you can really help us out over at patreon.com/whatnottodo, and feel free to give as much as you think that this project is worthy of your support. And anything that you're willing to give is such a blessing to us. And thank you.
Awesome. This is great. And for our listeners, we are at Cafe Hollander in Brookville, Wisconsin. I was just remarking it. This is a really cool place. I think they brew their own beer here, and they also have some other stuff on tap, but the beer's fantastic.
Yeah.
The atmosphere is great, and Craig's saying the food's fantastic.
Food's unbelievable, and it's part of a restaurant group called the Lowlands Group, and they've got a few other restaurants in town as well, and any of them are really good from a food, from a beverage perspective, and it's just got a nice vibe to it too.
Yeah, and it's tough to be successful in the restaurant industry.
Oh, it's very tough.
I think it's one of the top businesses that fail.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So if you're in the Milwaukee area, check it out, Cafe Hollander.
Check it out. Ask for Mackenzie. She'll wait on you.
There you go. Get the coffee stout.
That's right.
I recommend it. All right, so we are inescapably influenced in life. It's like, the world is a garden. We're growing up in it, and our environment matters, right? If we get blocked out from the sun, or whether up and dry out, no rain, that type of thing, right? But given the right exposure, we grow and we flourish, right? So because we're social and communal creatures, people play a huge part in our development, in our formation. And so, Craig, I'm curious, as you're looking back through your life, who I mean, probably several folks, but who's someone that really stands out as like someone who was just really, really crucial in your formation into who you are today?
Yeah. I think I'm going to start with my dad. I look at Dad as being somebody who, like I said, we talked earlier. My dad owns Sweeney's barbershop in Hales Corners, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Dad is an extremely hard worker, and you can look at him working full time at 76. Still in a fairly strenuous job. Standing all day at his age with he's got diabetes, but not bad. But he's got diabetes and still stands 8-9 hours a day cutting hair. So I look at his work ethic and the fact that he doesn't complain, that he goes to work with a smile on his face. I'm not saying I was smiling when he came home when we were kids, but just the work ethic and the not complaining that he is going to work and still working at his age. I think he loves it, but just having that joy in what you do on a daily basis, I think is huge and is a big influence on me. Not saying I didn't half-ass particular situations when I was younger or commit 100% to it, but I think having that foundation of looking at my father and how hard he's worked over the years was huge to me, or is huge to me to this day. I think it's a good example, not only to me, but to some other family members as well. So I think that's awesome.
That's cool.
If I look at two other people that I think would probably be very influential in my mind. My first boss. So when I got out of UWM, there was a guy named Jay Walt, who I think still is at a company called Automatic Entrances of Wisconsin. Jay was VP of sales over there and hired a kid wet behind the ears to go out and drive around the state of Wisconsin and sell automatic doors. And from a relationship perspective and just the kind of personality perspective, Jay was larger than life and taught me a lot about sales, about forging relationships, especially in kind of the old boy networked construction type of industry that we were in. But I learned a heck of a lot from Jay, and I thank God to this day that he was my first boss. I haven't been able to tell him that, but hopefully you'll listen to this podcast. But Jay, if you're listening, man, you're a big influence on my life. Probably the last one would be something more recent. I've been listening to more podcasts like this one, Kyle. It's a great job you're doing here. But I've been listening to more podcasts and reading more, just from a perspective of kind of my journey of self-discovery and who I want to be and where do I want to go with this life. In my next 40, 50 years, hopefully, right? Knock on wood. I ran across a guy named Lewis Howes.
Okay.
Lewis was an athlete back in the day and missed his chance because of injury and other things to becoming a pro football player, but kind of pulled himself up by the bootstraps, became kind of a LinkedIn trainer, consultant guy. He kind of went all in and learned as much as he could about LinkedIn. And became more successful, put on some LinkedIn local events. But now he's a nationally renowned author and speaker and podcaster. He wrote a book called The School of Greatness, which is unbelievable. The guests that he's had on there and the insights and the learnings from those podcast episodes that I've listened to, as I drive around, because I do a lot of driving. The ability to take nuggets from each of those and apply those nuggets, because as you can listen to all this stuff, but if you don't apply it, it's not going to do you any good. So the ability to take those as tools and apply those in my life have been huge. So if I look at one of the people that I listen to that I take content from, it would be him. Gary Vee as well is somebody that I really look up to and what he's done with Wine Library and now with Vaynerchuk Agency and what he's done. But Lewis Howes, he actually had a movie called Greatness that was released last night, and you can watch it online if you go to greatness.com, and it's pretty powerful, pretty cool stuff.
That's awesome. And so the book is called The School of Greatness.
Yeah, and that's what the podcast is called as well.
Yeah, someone else recommended that to me. I'm going to check that out. Very, very cool. Isn't it amazing? Like the dissemination of information. Like we were just talking about that earlier, but just how technology has decentralized everything. It's just crazy. It's, and I didn't set up the question this way, but often in life, the people that influence us aren't people that we know.
Right.
And here's the deal. If you're listening to this and you don't have anyone that you can go to and learn from in life, pick up a book, turn on a podcast, right? I mean, you're already doing that if you listen to this podcast, right?
Right.
But if you don't have someone in your life within proximity, you say, I want to be like them, that doesn't remove the responsibility for you to go find someone that you want to be like and learn from.
Yep.
And it's never been more readily available than today. Now, there are a lot of jokers out there, right? A lot of quote-unquote gurus and
that haven't done what they're preaching.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. But find the folks that are, follow these resources. Craig's books will be posted in the show notes. Read those. Go look up Lewis Howe. all that kind of stuff. Go read Craig's blog, right? Welcome to Walmart, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're 45 or older.
Yeah, if you're over 40 and you're kind of in a position where you're questioning your direction, if you're questioning your happiness, if you're questioning your success, and you're contemplating making a change, or you have made a change, and you want to learn from others that have done it successfully, that's what we're going to be all about, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so Craig, you're cranking away at work. You're at Cafe Hollander. Your head's buried in your laptop. You're blogging away, right?
With a spotted cow next.
Right, with a spotted cow, right? And you hear, Pete over at table 7 tell his buddy, "Hey, you should go do this." And you stop, you freeze, you cringe because it's the worst advice you've ever heard in your life. Right? You want to get up and go, wring Pete's neck and be like, don't do that. What's some of the worst advice you hear floating around these days, or that you've maybe been given along your journey? Some of the worst advice.
Yeah, so I hope my dad doesn't kill me for this, but I think a lot of the worst advice that parents have given, and not my dad specifically, but I think parents of a certain age have given their kids is not realizing the information age and what that brings to career paths, what that can do for opportunities for not only our age group, but really anybody boomer, younger than the boomer generation, really, right? So Gen X on down to now Gen Z or whatever it is, right? I don't know about you, but I'm confused with what are we on now? Are we Z or anyway?
I'm technically a millennial, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think you're a millennial. I'm Gen X, right? So I think the boomer generation, and as well as the greatest generation before them, have the notion that you get a job out of high school or right out of college and you stay there the rest of your life. Well, and I think that they've had a hard time realizing that the arc of a career takes on different paths, throughout a 50, 60-year span than it did before, right? And I think the advice to stick it out, the advice to stay at one place for that long can sometimes be a mistake, can sometimes be bad advice. I think you can lose out on a lot of opportunities in your life if you don't actually open yourselves up to those opportunities. And I think if you're not open to opportunities, if you're not open to conversations, that's a big mistake.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it I think it's contextual or situational. Like you can imagine the time in which that advice was given, right? When it was more advantageous, maybe given the pensions and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
To stay in one place.
Yeah.
The world has changed in a lot of ways, and I don't think that's a legitimate strategy anymore. Not that someone couldn't do that, but. I mean, you think it's depending on what what you went to school for or this, that, or that thing. I mean, it's at-will employment. You're not given something like a continual pension, so you don't have the same incentive to stay with somebody that long.
Right.
And to your point, if someone is still figuring out what they're wanting to do with life, the experience of doing different things, I think the key is whatever you choose to do. If you're there for 6 months or 3 years or 30 years, be all in when you're there, right? Yeah. Be all in when you're there. Don't just treat it as whatever. But yeah, that's interesting. I agree. I think maybe once upon a time that was better advice than it is today.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. And I get, like you said, I totally understand where they're coming from based upon contextually where that ideology comes from. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. You don't have a college degree, or even if you do, and you realize, well, Corey, he was on episode 8, and he went out to Eau Claire, got his undergrad in, I want to say, exercise management, went to go work for the Badgers, and realized after 2 months, this is not what he wanted to do with his life. And it seems like that's such a common story where a lot of folks aren't even applying or using the degree that they received, and now what do you do?
Right. Well, exactly. I think that's very common. I for a long time didn't utilize my educational background at all, and I think, that being said, I think, as you know, so many of us grow and are different people when we're 35 or 45 than we were when we were 21 or 22. And so what we want out of life changes as well. So, that can, again, we're talking about life, we're talking about careers, but we're also talking about relationships as well, right? So people grow over time, they change over time, and you hope that you're in positions both from a career perspective and from a relationship perspective that other person or that job or that role can adapt and change with you, right? Because like we talked about passions and desires, passion can kind of ebb and flow and come and go, but if you've got that desire and that structure that allows those passions to come and go, but still have that solid foundation, that's important, right?
Yeah, and it even goes back to, like, in this situation, maybe someone could be in a job their whole life if they were clear on what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
If they knew that that's what they wanted, if they knew that this is what they wanted to be, and they wanted to work for this company.
Yeah.
If they weren't guided, a lot of folks when they're younger, they don't have that intuition to make those decisions or to think to ask themselves those questions. And if they're not being guided to ask those things, then they are going to flounder, to a certain extent. But so then there's the experience, and so we see that often in our day and age where it's, people are, 1, 2, 3 years here, 1, 2, 3 years there, that type of thing until they figure out.
Right.
But it also can be a way to gain new skills, right? I mean, depending on what you're doing, depending on, if someone's committed to sales, but they're figuring out sales here, and they're kind of climbing the ladder sales-wise or whatever it might be. But yeah, it's interesting.
No, that's a whole other podcast. We can talk.
So what you're saying is that your dad gave you the worst advice ever.
Yeah. Sorry, Dad. But you're also one of the people that I value as a mentor. So
exactly. Well, and I think that's a fantastic point, right? Just because someone is a mentor doesn't mean they're always going to give you the perfect advice, right? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we have to, at the end of the day, we have to be able to think for ourselves. We have to make decisions, and there's a lot of variables that go into that. A lot of lenses, a lot of mental models, right?
Absolutely.
All right, last but not least, Craig, you get a billboard.
Yeah.
In every major city during rush hour. Everyone's listening to what not to do, right? Of course.
All right.
But because they're in a traffic jam, they stop and look up and they see a billboard, and it's your billboard. It's Craig's billboard.
Yeah.
You get a message on there. What message do they see? Okay. Billions of people are going to see this, Craig.
So,
what message do they see?
On the bottom, it's going to say, welcome to Walmart.com, blog and podcast. But I'm just kidding. But the message here is going to be, I think it comes back to what we talked about all through this podcast. It's be you, period, 100%. So pick a direction that you have a desire for, that you feel confident that your gifts will allow you to be successful, that you feel confident you're going to enjoy, but be all in. And I think what you said too is be all in wherever you're at, because that can open up doors that you don't even see yet. But be you and commit 100% to what you're doing.
That's good. That's good. Awesome. Well, Craig, this has been such a blast. We got some beers to finish here, so
yeah,
let's do it. But any last parting words you want to give our listeners?
No, man, Kyle, I appreciate your invitation here. I think you're doing a great service to the community with this podcast, and whatever I can do to help it grow. And from a listenership perspective, I'd love to do so. But love to come on again, maybe sometime down the future and see where we're all at.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
It'd be fun.
And we will have, I'm going to ask you this, Craig. If folks want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So why don't you have folks go to Craig, C-R-A-I-G, at welcometowalmart.com. That would be the best way to get a hold of me.
Cool. So if you like what Craig's up to, you like the way that he thinks, you want to get in touch with him, you want to learn from him, you want to do business with him, hit him up at Craig at welcometowalmart.com. We'll have this in the show notes too, so you can go run from there. And we're also going to have Craig's top 3 books. He already gave you a couple, but we're going to leave the other one a mystery here. He said Think and Grow Rich and 10X by Grant Cardone. Think and Grow Rich is Napoleon Hill. It's a classic. And you'll have to take a look at the show notes to see what number 3 will be. So
all right.
It'll be awesome. Well, Craig, this is great, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Kyle, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic experience.
Fantastic indeed. Man, what a great conversation with Craig. I really, really enjoyed it and personally took away so much. So let's recap. First, Craig told us, don't build somebody else's dream. Don't build somebody else's dream. I mean, since when has it become more attractive to us to give up on our own dreams and go build somebody else's? Right? I mean, since when does that appeal to us more? I mean, it's crazy when you just kind of stop and think about it. So don't build somebody else's dream. Go and build yours. Make a plan and execute it. Secondly, don't worry about what others are thinking. And this maybe plays out the first one. Maybe you were told that you can't go build your dream. Your dream is too big, or your dream's too small, or your dream's not good enough, or your dream is not what you're supposed to be doing, or you can never make money doing what it is that you dream about doing. Look, don't worry about what others are thinking. Have your dream, make a plan, and execute it. And lastly, don't discount the work. When you decide to go all in on your dream and you make the plan and you execute the plan, here's the deal. It's going to be maybe harder than what you would expect. A good rule of thumb, things in life will often take twice as long and cost twice as much. So don't discount the work, how hard it's going to be. You've heard in other podcasts, other interviews, don't go it alone. Use the resources, etc. Don't discount the work. Well, thanks again for listening. Just remember, this podcast is really about you and it's for you. It's about helping to connect you to stories and experiences and failures so that you can be equipped for success in your own life. If you feel like you've been helped, if you feel like you indeed have been equipped, go help somebody else. Go equip them. Give them this podcast and let them dig in. Who knows which story might radically change the course of their life. If you know someone that should be on this podcast, maybe you should be on this podcast, shoot me a note, DM me, comment, tag them below, tag yourself, and let's get on the phone or in person and get it done. I would love to hear your story and get it to the world. Also, check out the show notes. We'll have Craig's top 3 books, as well as links to social media, our website, etc. Further resources here from the show that we discussed, and hopefully they will be of good use to you. Well, it's been said that good men learn from their own mistakes, but great men, they learn from the mistakes of others. So go and be great, and we'll see you next time.